The sun had nearly disappeared behind the clouds, leaving Tarnath Prime in a dim, gray twilight. Captain Elias Grant led the way down the rocky ridge, careful with each step as Kale, the alien warrior, leaned heavily on his arm. The battlefield below stretched into a misty valley, littered with the wreckage of ships and scattered remnants of both human and Varic soldiers. Every shadow seemed alive with hidden danger, yet Elias kept moving, refusing to look back. Easy. Slow, he murmured to Kale, guiding him over a jagged patch of terrain. Kale, despite his alien physique, moved cautiously, his strength returning gradually but unpredictably. Each step was a struggle, but the alien persisted. Elias admired that persistence. It reminded him of the human soldiers he had served alongside, who refused to give up even when the odds were impossible. Kale stopped for a moment, leaning against a large rock. His golden eyes studied Elias intently. The Varic warrior did not speak in a language Elias could understand, but there was meaning in the silent stare. Elias hesitated, then nodded. It was not about words. They were forming a bond in a way neither could explain. "I don't know if you understand me," Elias said softly, "but we're in this together." He smiled faintly, hoping Kale would sense the sincerity in his tone. To his relief, the alien inclined his head slowly, almost as if acknowledging the promise. They continued in silence, the stormy wind carrying ash and dust across their path. As darkness settled, Elias activated his suit's night vision mode, casting everything in greenish hues. He spotted faint movements in the distance, creatures native to the planet, not hostile but curious. Kale stiffened, instincts kicking in, and Elias gently lowered his hand. "It's okay. They won't hurt us," he whispered. The alien let out a low hum, a sound Elias interpreted as a mix of gratitude and cautious trust. Despite their differences, a mutual respect was forming. It was remarkable, Elias thought, how quickly life could bridge the gap between enemies when both had no other choice. They stopped near a small cave, partially hidden behind twisted metal and jagged rocks. Elias suggested it as a temporary shelter. Kale leaned against the cave wall, exhaustion clear in every movement. Elias pulled a small field blanket from his pack and draped it over the alien's shoulders. Kale made a soft sound that Elias assumed meant thanks. "I don't know much about your species," Elias said quietly, "but I want to help you survive. We can't change the war around us, but we can make it through today." Kyle's golden eyes seemed to focus on him, and for a brief moment Elias thought he saw recognition, almost as if the alien understood more than he could ever speak. Night deepened. Elias kept watch outside the cave while Kale rested, checking for approaching dangers. He thought of his family back on Earth, imagining their faces, the warmth of home he had not felt in months. That thought gave him strength. Even here, far from civilization, he had a purpose: to protect a life, even an enemy's life. The hours passed slowly. Elias tried to communicate with Kale, using gestures and simple phrases. Pointing to his chest meant friend, raising a hand meant stop, and mimicking breathing motions conveyed rest. Kyle observed carefully, mimicking some gestures imperfectly but with clear effort. Elias chuckled quietly. The alien's determination to understand him reminded him why humans thrived: curiosity, adaptation, and a willingness to learn even in the hardest moments. At one point, Elias offered water from his canteen. Kale hesitated, then took it with care, drinking slowly. It was a small victory, but for Elias it represented something larger: trust. Small steps could grow into great understanding, he realized. Humans had a way of surviving not just through strength but through compassion and patience, and now Kale was learning it firsthand. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed across the valley. Elias froze. "Stay here," he whispered, motioning to Kale. From the cave entrance he peered into the night. Shadows moved along the battlefield, figures moving silently but purposefully. Elias recognized human patrols in the distance. They had been searching for survivors, and now they were near. He debated his options. Should he signal them? It could endanger both him and Kale. Or should they remain hidden and wait until the patrol passed? Elias chose caution. Using the rocks for cover, he watched the patrol move, noting their patterns and timing. Kale, though weak, instinctively crouched lower, understanding the need for stealth. Hours later, the patrol moved on, leaving the cave in relative peace. Elias let out a quiet sigh of relief and glanced at Kale. The alien's golden eyes reflected the dim light, and in them, Elias saw not just survival instinct but curiosity. Kale was learning from him, just as Elias had learned something about the alien in return. Courage could exist even in the smallest gestures, and even enemies could become allies under the right circumstances. Elias decided it was time to teach Kale a simple human skill, navigating using landmarks. He pointed to the distant ridge, then to the small cluster of rocks near their cave. Using gestures, he guided Kale step by step, showing him how to recognize safe paths and avoid hidden dangers. Kale followed carefully, mimicking Elias's movements, though clumsily at first. Each success brought a quiet nod from Elias and a low hum from Kyle. Gratitude or understanding he could not tell, but it was enough. Over the next few days, Elias and Kyle traveled together cautiously. The alien's strength returned gradually, though not fully, and Elias marveled at Kale's resilience. Despite injuries, Kyle adapted to human movement, learning to trust not only his body but also Elias's guidance. They faced natural obstacles, rock slides, toxic streams, and sudden storms, but each challenge strengthened their bond. They learned to communicate with gestures, sounds, and shared glances, forming a language of cooperation beyond words. One evening, as they camped under the jagged cliffs of DEATHWORLD, Kale did something unexpected. He picked up a small piece of metal debris, shaping it with careful movements. Elias watched curiously as Kyle began to create a crude tool, a symbol of adaptation and intelligence. Elias smiled. Humans had long used creativity and ingenuity to survive, and now Kale was learning the same lesson. "You're learning fast," Elias said, pointing to the tool. Kale's golden eyes met his, and he emitted a soft melodic hum. Elias nodded, interpreting it as understanding. "Good. That's how we survive together." Through these shared experiences, the two warriors began to see beyond the labels of enemy and ally. Elias realized that Kale's people were not so different from humans. They fought to protect families, communities, and ideals. Kale observed Elias's courage, patience, and compassion, traits that made humans remarkable even in the harshest environments. One night, as the wind swept across the cliffs, Elias spoke quietly, almost to himself. "I don't know what happens next. The war, the rest of my team. Maybe it doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you survive. That's enough for today." Kyle's eyes seemed to soften as if acknowledging the sentiment. Elias felt a warmth in his chest, a rare feeling in the midst of war. Hope. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of purple and gold, Kale could walk without leaning heavily on Elias. The alien's movements were still cautious, but confidence had returned. They had survived the first leg of their journey together, not just through strength, but through trust and understanding. Elias looked at Kale and thought about what he had learned. The universe was vast and indifferent, but small acts of courage and kindness could create ripples far beyond one life. One soldier's decision to give blood to a dying alien could spark something greater, a bond that might change the way both species saw each other. Kale, too, seemed to understand something fundamental. He had seen humanity's resilience, its adaptability, and its capacity for compassion even in the heart of war. And while he could not speak Elias's language, his eyes told the story clearly. He trusted the human soldier with his life, and he would not forget this debt. Together they moved forward, leaving the ridge and entering the valley below. The battlefield stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time neither feared the unknown. They were partners now, bound by survival, trust, and a shared understanding that humanity, in all its imperfection, could inspire loyalty, courage, and hope, even in the heart of an enemy. And so, the journey continued. The human soldier and the alien warrior, once enemies, now walked side by side, learning from each other, trusting each other, and proving that even in the darkest times, friendship and compassion could shine brighter than any weapon. The valley stretched before Elias and Kale like an endless expanse of jagged rocks, scorched earth, and scattered ruins. Dawn's pale light revealed the destruction of war, burned-out vehicles, crumbled fortifications, and the silent remains of both human and Varic soldiers. Despite the devastation, the air held a strange clarity, as if the stormy night had washed the battlefield clean, leaving the world momentarily still. Elias led the way cautiously, scanning every shadow and movement. Kale followed steadily, no longer dependent on Elias's arm but staying close enough that their steps were synchronized. Elias had noticed subtle changes in the alien, muscles moving with more confidence, breathing steadier, and eyes sharper. Survival instincts still guided Kyle, but he was beginning to trust not just his own strength, but the guidance of the human beside him. They reached a narrow canyon where a small stream trickled through blackened rocks. The water was faintly luminescent, reflecting the purple and gold light of the morning sky. Elias knelt and tested it carefully. The readings from his suit indicated that it was safe to drink, but the alien water could have unpredictable effects. Kyle crouched beside him, his golden eyes watching intently. Elias gestured for him to drink, pointing to the liquid and mimicking the motion of sipping. Kyle hesitated, then followed the instructions cautiously. After a few moments, he straightened, giving a subtle hum that Elias interpreted as approval or gratitude. "This is how we do it," Elias said softly. "Small steps, one at a time." Kale's presence was a constant reminder that war was not always about strength or weapons. It was also about cooperation, trust, and understanding. Elias had seen humans act with courage countless times, but now he was witnessing the same qualities reflected in an alien. Kale adapted quickly, observing, learning, and applying knowledge, and Elias felt a sense of pride and wonder. The canyon widened, revealing a stretch of uneven terrain littered with massive boulders. Elias knew this section would test them. One wrong step could mean injury or worse. He led carefully, pointing out safe footholds and guiding Kale over slippery rocks. Kale followed, mimicking the human's movements with surprising precision. Even without words, a rhythm developed between them, steps, pauses, signals, all forming a silent language of teamwork. Suddenly, a rumble echoed through the canyon. Elias froze. Ahead, a massive boulder began to shift precariously. It teetered on the edge of a small cliff above, and if it fell, it could crush them both. Elias grabbed Kale's arm. "Move quickly!" Kale reacted instinctively, leaping to the side with surprising agility. Elias followed, barely avoiding the falling rock, which shattered on the canyon floor with a deafening crash. They both crouched, hearts pounding, and then looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. They had survived because they trusted each other. "You saved me," Kale said, in his melodic alien tongue, the sound vibrating softly through the air. Elias didn't understand the words, but the tone spoke clearly of gratitude. He nodded. "We save each other. That's how we survive." As they continued, the terrain grew more difficult. Patches of soft, molten soil threatened to trap their feet, while jagged rocks tore at their boots. Kale tested the ground carefully, pausing frequently. Elias reached out, guiding him over the trickiest spots, and Kale began to anticipate the movements. Soon he was moving with confidence, sometimes even leading Elias through unfamiliar paths. By midday, exhaustion began to set in. Elias and Kale stopped to rest near a cluster of rocky outcrops. Elias pulled rations from his pack, energy bars and small packs of nutrient gel. He offered one to Kale, who inspected it curiously before tasting. The alien's eyes lit up with a subtle glow, a clear sign of approval. Elias smiled, glad to see Kyle gaining strength. "You're stronger than you look," Elias said. Kale tilted his head, a gesture that Elias interpreted as acknowledgement or perhaps curiosity. Over the next few minutes, they rested in silence, the only sounds the soft trickle of the stream and the wind sweeping through the canyon. The journey resumed in the afternoon. Elias noticed the subtle ways Kale observed the world, how he scanned the rocks for danger, watched the shadows for movement, and adjusted his stride to conserve energy. Kale was learning from Elias, but Elias was also learning from Kale. The alien's instincts and acute senses revealed dangers humans might overlook, and Elias began to rely on that intuition. Together, they complemented each other, a perfect balance of human ingenuity and alien instinct. As evening approached, they faced the next challenge, a ravine too wide to jump across. The only way forward was a fallen tree, bridging the gap, but it was unstable and slick with moisture. Elias tested the balance first, using a walking stick to probe the surface. It shifted slightly, but seemed strong enough to hold them. "Follow my lead," Elias instructed. He moved slowly across, each step deliberate, and Cale mirrored him, stepping cautiously. Halfway across, the wood groaned under their weight. Elias froze. Cale paused behind him, eyes wide. With careful coordination, they shifted their weight in tandem and the tree held. By the time they reached the other side, they both exhaled with relief. That was close, Elias muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Cale made a soft hum, which Elias took as agreement. He realized something profound. Survival was no longer about brute force, it was about patience, trust, and teamwork. Every step forward solidified their bond, creating an unspoken promise that neither would leave the other behind. Night fell quickly in the canyon, bringing with it a biting cold. Elias found a small alcove and set up a makeshift camp. Cale, though still recovering, helped gather rocks to form a windbreak. They huddled together under a lightweight thermal blanket, sharing body heat. The alien watched Elias as he examined his supplies, seemingly fascinated by the human's methodical approach to survival. "You learn fast," Elias said quietly, breaking the silence. Cale tilted his head, then touched Elias's shoulder, a gesture of trust and acknowledgement. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. He had saved Cale's life, yes, but Cale had also taught him something. The value of patience. Observation and cooperation transcends species. During the night, a storm rolled in, and heavy rain began to fall. The canyon rumbled with the distant sound of falling rocks and shifting earth. Elias stayed alert, keeping watch over Cale, who rested but remained vigilant. Despite the danger, Elias felt a strange sense of calm. Together they had survived treacherous terrain, natural hazards, and exhaustion. Together they had built a fragile trust that could carry them further than either could alone. By dawn, the storm had passed. The ground was slippery, but the air felt fresh, almost alive. Elias stood and helped Cale up. "We keep moving," he said. Cale nodded, a small glow of determination in his golden eyes. They stepped out of the alcove, ready to face the next stretch of the journey. As they moved through the canyon, Elias thought about the long road ahead. The battlefield was far from safe, and their journey would not be easy. But he also knew this. Human courage, combined with compassion and adaptability, could inspire hope even in the darkest places. Cale, once a dying enemy warrior, was now a companion, learning and growing alongside him. Together they had discovered the power of trust and the potential for cooperation that transcended species. The valley stretched before them, filled with unknown dangers, but Elias no longer felt fear. He had seen the best of humanity reflected in Cale's determination, and he had seen the best of an alien warrior reflected in his own patience and guidance. Together they were more than survivors. They were partners, pioneers of a bond that could challenge the boundaries of war and fear. And so, side by side, Elias and Cale continued their journey. Every step was a lesson, every obstacle a test of trust, and every glance a confirmation that friendship, courage, and understanding could grow even in the harshest, most unlikely places. Humanity's greatest strength, Elias realized, was not just in its weapons or technology, it was in its heart. And now that heart had touched an alien warrior, proving that even in war, life, kindness, and cooperation could shine brighter than fear. Elias and Cale moved cautiously through the dense forest that had begun to reclaim part of the battlefield. The trees were tall and thick, their trunks twisted from centuries of growth and the recent devastation of war. The air smelled of wet earth and moss, a sharp contrast to the acrid smoke that had filled the valley days before. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of the past days ease slightly from his shoulders. Cale, walking beside him, scanned the area with acute awareness. His golden eyes reflected the faint sunlight filtering through the canopy, alert to every movement. Though his body had regained strength, his mind remained vigilant. The alien warrior had learned to trust Elias, but trust alone could not protect them from the dangers of a world still in chaos. As they moved deeper, Cale paused suddenly, ears twitching at a sound Elias had not noticed. It was faint at first, a mechanical hum, almost hidden beneath the natural sounds of the forest, but unmistakable. Cale raised his hand, signaling for Elias to stop. The human crouched behind a large tree, eyes narrowing. "Something's ahead," Cale whispered, his melodic voice careful, cautious. Elias nodded, recognizing the tone as one of alertness, not alarm. Together they crept forward, careful to stay hidden. Soon they reached a clearing. At first Elias saw nothing unusual. just fallen trees, vines, and the soft moss covering the ground. But then he noticed the faint glow of a hidden energy device partially buried beneath debris. Kyle's keen vision detected movement behind the device. Humans and Varric soldiers working together, not as enemies but in collaboration. Elias crouched lower. What are they doing?" he whispered, disbelief in his voice. Kale studied the scene and responded with a series of low hums and clicks. Though Elias did not understand the language, the tone conveyed urgency and warning. The alien pointed subtly toward a partially uncovered holographic display near the energy device. Elias crept closer, careful not to make a sound. The hologram flickered to life as he approached, showing detailed schematics of weapons, energy supplies, and communication networks. A message scrolled across the interface, clearly indicating a secret alliance between a hidden faction of humans and Varric leaders. Their goal was not to end the war honorably, but to seize control of both species' resources and expand their power. Elias's stomach tightened. "They've been manipulating both sides," he said quietly, his mind racing. Kale's golden eyes narrowed, a clear sign that the alien understood the magnitude of this revelation. For weeks, both humans and Varric had believed they were fighting for survival and honor, yet it had been orchestrated by a third party, hidden and unknown. Kale emitted a low hum, the sound almost like frustration mixed with anger. Elias understood. It was the same feeling he had experienced when realizing the truth of the war. This wasn't about loyalty, duty, or survival. This was about control. The two warriors exchanged a glance, the meaning clear without words. They could not allow this conspiracy to continue. Both their species had suffered enough, and the lives lost on the battlefield had been exploited for power. Elias activated his communicator, carefully adjusting the encryption to send a secure message to Lieutenant Mara Linton. He explained the discovery in brief coded terms. Hidden faction. Both sides manipulated. Evidence secured. Need immediate support. Kyle stood beside him observing, understanding the need for human technology even if he could not operate it himself. As the holographic display flickered, Elias realized the enormity of their situation. They could return to their respective leaders, but doing so openly might put them at risk. The conspiracy could silence them before they had a chance to reveal the truth. They needed a plan, one that relied on stealth, intelligence, and the trust they had built over days of survival. Kale tapped the holographic interface with a clawed finger, highlighting sections Elias had not noticed. The alien seemed to understand the structure of the device better than Elias could, recognizing the flow of information and how it could be extracted. Together they worked silently, combining human ingenuity and alien perception. Within minutes, they had gathered enough evidence, holographic data, schematics, and records of communications between the hidden faction and their allies. "We have what we need," Elias said, breathless but focused. "Now we get it back to command." Carefully, Kale emitted a soft hum, the tone of agreement. Though the path ahead was uncertain, they had each other, and that trust would be their greatest weapon. As they began to move back through the forest, Kale paused, glancing at Elias. There was something in his golden eyes that made the human pause as well. Without words, Kale communicated a simple thought. "We can survive this, but we must trust each other completely." Elias nodded, understanding perfectly. The journey back was slow. The forest held dangers, loose rocks, slippery slopes, and hidden creatures, but every obstacle was met with teamwork. Kale's instincts alerted Elias to subtle hazards, while Elias's experience with terrain and strategy guided Kyle. The synergy between them was remarkable. It was a dance of survival, each learning from the other, each reinforcing the strengths of the other. During a brief rest near a stream, Elias reflected on how far they had come. Just days ago, Kale had been a dying enemy on the battlefield, a stranger with golden eyes and alien skin. Now, he was a partner, a friend, and a reminder of what humanity could inspire. Courage, compassion, and cooperation beyond boundaries. Kale, too, seemed to understand the importance of their bond. He watched Elias intently as he cleaned his wounds and prepared their supplies, his golden eyes reflecting both caution and curiosity. Despite his previous life as a soldier, Kale was learning something new. That strength was not only measured in combat, but in patience, empathy, and the willingness to protect life, even that of an enemy. The sun began to set again, casting long shadows across the forest. Elias and Kale reached a small ridge overlooking a safe valley they could use as a staging point. Elias scanned the area, noting both human and alien patrols in the distance. They needed to wait until nightfall to move without being detected. As they settled behind a rocky outcrop, Elias spoke softly. "Cal, I know this is strange for you. Humans, aliens, enemies, allies. It all changes so fast. But trust me, what we're doing, it matters. Not just for us, but for everyone who's been caught in this war." Kale made a soft hum in response, acknowledging the human's words in his own way. Night fell, and the two warriors moved silently through the shadows. The forest seemed alive around them, every rustle of leaves or crack of a branch sounding like a threat. Elias led carefully, using hand signals and subtle gestures to guide Kale. The alien's senses were sharper than any human's, yet Kale followed faithfully, trusting Elias's judgment. After hours of careful movement, they reached the edge of the valley, where a hidden ravine would allow them to bypass the patrols. Elias and Kale paused, catching their breath and sharing a moment of quiet understanding. They were no longer just a human and a Varric soldier. They were allies united by survival, by trust, and by the knowledge of a shared purpose. Elias looked at Kale and said quietly, "We have the evidence. We can stop this. Together we can change things." Kale's golden eyes met his, glowing faintly in the darkness. The alien emitted a hum of agreement, a promise that transcended words. As they prepared to descend into the valley, Elias felt a surge of determination. They had discovered the truth behind the war, and now they held the power to reveal it. The journey would be dangerous, but it was a journey worth taking. Humanity's courage, Kale's strength, and the bond they had built could overcome even the greatest deception. In that moment, Elias realized something profound. Even in a universe filled with conflict, betrayal and danger, compassion and trust could create change. One human soldier's act of kindness, donating blood to a dying alien, had set in motion a chain of events that could reshape the fate of two species. Kale stepped beside him, ready to move forward. Together they descended into the valley, shadows blending with shadows, hearts united by a shared mission. The hidden faction might have controlled the battlefield, but they could not control the courage, intelligence, and cooperation of two warriors determined to protect life and reveal the truth. The night was quiet, the stars faintly visible through breaks in the canopy. Elias and Kale moved steadily, aware that every step was a risk, but also aware that their combined strength and trust were unmatched. They had survived storms, treacherous terrain, and the chaos of war. Now they were ready to confront the deception at the heart of the conflict and show the universe the power of humanity's courage and compassion. And so, with the valley stretched before them and the evidence secured, Elias and Kale continued their journey. Each step was a testament to what humans, and all species capable of kindness and trust, could achieve. In a universe full of challenges, one bond between a human and an alien could inspire hope, change the course of war, and remind all who witnessed it that life, courage, and compassion were the most powerful forces of all. The journey to the leaders' encampments was long and exhausting. Elias and Kale moved cautiously through the remnants of the battlefield, each step measured to avoid detection by patrols from both sides. The evidence they carried, the holographic files, schematics, and communication logs, was precious. It was the key to exposing the hidden faction manipulating the war, but it was also fragile. A single mistake could cost them everything. Kale walked beside Elias, his golden eyes scanning the horizon, muscles tense but controlled. Despite his recovery, the alien remained alert, aware that enemies or natural dangers could strike at any moment. Elias, meanwhile, reflected on how far they had come. Just days ago, Kale had been a dying stranger. Now he was a trusted companion and a symbol of what humanity could inspire: courage, intelligence, and compassion beyond borders. As they approached a narrow ridge overlooking the human command center, Elias signaled Kale to stop. He crouched low, observing the perimeter through his visor. Patrols moved in predictable patterns, and the base appeared well guarded. Elias knew they could not simply walk in and deliver the evidence. They needed a plan, one that would allow them to reach the leaders safely while minimizing risk. Kale tilted his head, observing Elias's movements. He understood instinctively patience, observation, and calculated action were key. Elias gave a small nod, and together they began to descend the ridge, moving silently among the shadows. The first challenge came in the form of a malfunctioning energy fence that hummed with unstable power. Elias crouched low and inspected the mechanism. "I can bypass it," he whispered. "Stay behind me." Kale watched closely as Elias used his portable toolkit to reroute the current temporarily. Sparks flew, and the fence hummed dangerously, but Elias's hands were steady. Within moments, a safe path opened, and they slipped through undetected. Kale emitted a soft hum, a sound Elias had come to understand as affirmation. Inside the camp, the evidence would need to reach Lieutenant Mara Linton first. Elias knew she could verify the data and escalate it to command quickly. They moved along service corridors and storage areas, carefully avoiding the attention of human soldiers who would otherwise see Kale as an enemy. Each step tested their coordination, but the silent communication they had developed over days of survival made the task manageable. At last, they reached Mara's office, a small but well-equipped room with secure communication terminals. Elias tapped the terminal and quickly transferred the holographic files. He paused, letting Kale observe the process. The alien's golden eyes tracked the data streams, fascinated by the human technology and the precision with which Elias operated. When the transfer was complete, Mara appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "Captain Grant? And Kyle?" she asked, her voice rising in astonishment. "You brought him inside?" "Yes," Elias replied firmly. "He's not our enemy. Not anymore. And the evidence he helped uncover? It's bigger than either side realized. We need to act now." Mara stepped aside, allowing Kale to enter. The alien moved cautiously but with confidence, showing no aggression. The human soldiers present hesitated, unsure how to respond to a Varric in their midst. But Elias stood beside Kale, a silent reassurance that he could be trusted. Together they briefed Mara, explaining the extent of the hidden faction's manipulation. The holographic files displayed intercepted communications, weapon schematics, and plans showing the faction's intent to control resources from both humans and Varric alike. The truth was undeniable. Both sides had been deceived, their efforts in the war exploited for a hidden agenda. Mara's eyes widened. "If this is accurate, it could change everything," she said. "We need to present this to command immediately. And Kale, you'll need to testify as well." Kale made a soft hum, and Elias interpreted it as agreement. The alien had come to understand the stakes, and his testimony would be crucial. Together, they would not only expose the conspiracy, but also demonstrate that cooperation between humans and Varric could achieve more than continued fighting ever could. That evening, Command convened an emergency council, bringing together human and Varric leaders in a secure chamber. Elias and Kale presented the evidence, detailing the manipulation and the risks it posed to both species. The room was tense, filled with whispers, questions, and disbelief. But as the holographic data played out, the reality could not be denied. Leaders on both sides exchanged wary glances, but the decision became clear. The war could no longer continue blindly. The hidden faction had to be stopped, and diplomacy needed to take precedence. For the first time in decades, humans and Varric leaders agreed to pause hostilities and investigate the conspiracy together. As the council adjourned, Kale turned to Elias. His golden eyes reflected gratitude and respect, emotions Elias had rarely seen from a Varric outside battle. Elias nodded, understanding the depth of the bond they had formed. One soldier's act of courage, a decision to donate blood to a dying enemy, had set in motion events that changed the course of history. "You saved more than my life," Kyle said softly, in his melodic language. Elias smiled faintly. "We saved each other," he replied. "That's how it works." In the days that followed, both species worked together to rebuild trust. Patrols were reorganized, communication channels opened, and joint missions began to ensure peace and security. The memory of the war's devastation remained, but it was tempered by the knowledge that unity could achieve far more than conflict ever could. Elias and Kale continued to travel together, now not as fugitives but as ambassadors. They visited communities affected by the war, helping humans and Varric alike understand that survival and cooperation required empathy, courage, and mutual respect. Their story spread quickly, a tale of a human soldier and an alien warrior who had overcome fear, prejudice, and danger to create hope. One afternoon, as they walked through a small Varick settlement, Elias noticed children observing them with curiosity. Kale knelt to greet them, demonstrating gentleness and patience. The children reached out, touching his hands and armor with wonder. Elias smiled, realizing that these small interactions, simple acts of trust, would plant seeds of understanding for future generations. The human commander, Mara, approached Elias later that day. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined," she said. "Your actions didn't just save a life, they changed how two species see each other." "That's extraordinary," Elias shrugged. "I just did what anyone should have done," he replied humbly. "We all have a choice, even in war. Sometimes the right choice is the hardest one, but it can make all the difference." Kale made a soft hum of agreement. Elias laughed quietly. The alien had learned more than survival. He had learned humanity itself. The courage to act for life, the patience to understand, and the strength to inspire trust. Months passed, and the fragile peace held. Trade routes reopened, joint patrols maintained security, and human and Varick communities began to work together on rebuilding projects. The scars of war were visible, but hope had grown stronger than fear. Elias and Kale stood together one evening on a hill overlooking the valley, the sun setting in shades of gold and violet. The battlefield below was quiet, the sounds of reconstruction replacing the echoes of war. Elias looked at Kale and said softly, "We did it. Look at what we started." Kyle's golden eyes glowed faintly in the fading light. He raised a clawed hand and touched Elias's shoulder, a gesture of respect, friendship, and understanding. Elias nodded. That simple act, stronger than any weapon, symbolized everything they had achieved together. The story of a human soldier who donated his blood to a dying alien warrior became a legend across both species. It was told not just as a tale of survival, but as a story of courage, compassion, and the power of trust. Humanity's strength had been shown not through weapons, but through actions that inspired hope and unity. Elias reflected on the journey, the dangers, the obstacles, the moments of doubt, and the triumphs. He realized that in a universe filled with conflict and uncertainty, it was humanity's ability to act with empathy, courage, and intelligence that made the difference. One choice made in a moment of compassion had sparked change that would last generations. Kale looked at the stars above, his golden eyes reflecting the light of distant suns. Elias stood beside him thinking of Earth, of the countless humans who had fought for survival, and of the potential that lay within every individual to inspire hope, even in the darkest of times. Together, human and alien warrior, once enemies, now allies and friends, watched the stars. And in that quiet moment, Elias understood what humanity had always known. Courage, compassion, and cooperation were the greatest powers of all, and they could change the universe. The journey had ended, but the legacy of their actions would continue, echoing across planets, inspiring generations, and proving that even in the vastness of space, humanity could shine brighter than any star. The twin suns of Zithra beat down relentlessly on the desert city of Orion, the human colony that had grown into one of the most important trading hubs in this part of the galaxy. Sandstorms were frequent, and the wind often carried the sharp, metallic scent of the nearby ore mines. Yet despite the harsh environment, the city was alive with energy. Humans had built towering buildings of reinforced alloy, massive energy conduits, and clean streets that contrasted sharply with the barren desert outside. Captain Ethan Vance strode across the central plaza with his usual calm, purposeful gait. He was tall with dark hair, a lean but strong frame, and eyes that seemed to hold the quiet confidence of someone who had faced danger countless times. Humans might not be the largest or strongest species in the galaxy, but Ethan carried the reputation that humans earned wherever they went. Clever, determined, and fearless in the face of challenges. Today, however, Ethan was not thinking about trade negotiations or patrols in the outer sectors. Today, his mind was restless, caught between hope and fear. In a few hours, he was to meet Lyria, the Thryn diplomat whose presence on Zithra had always been magnetic. Lyria's species was tall and elegant, with luminous skin that shimmered in the sunlight and eyes that glowed faintly when she was excited or agitated. She had a sharp mind, a graceful demeanor, and a charisma that could influence entire councils of aliens. But to Ethan, she was more than that. She was the reason he had learned to read alien languages fluently, to negotiate difficult disputes, and even to take risks he would not normally have dared. For 6 months, Ethan had worked up the courage to ask Lyria a question that went beyond professional respect. He had watched her navigate political crises, mediate disputes, and protect the weaker colonies. He admired her strength, intelligence, and dedication. And somewhere along the way, admiration had grown into something more, something human. Now, standing before the massive doors of the council hall, he felt the familiar churn of nerves. He smoothed his jacket and reminded himself that humans were capable of anything they set their minds to. Humans could survive in harsh deserts, climb the tallest mountains, explore unknown planets, and even negotiate peace between warring alien factions. Surely they could face the anxiety of asking someone they cared about to take a chance on them. Inside the council hall, Lyria waited. She was reviewing holographic reports of trade routes and security updates, her delicate fingers dancing across a translucent screen. Ethan's heart pounded as he approached, and he caught her gaze. Her eyes lit up with recognition, and she smiled politely. "Captain Vance," she said in her melodic voice. "I wasn't expecting you so early." "I wanted to speak with you," Ethan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's important." Lyria nodded and gestured for him to sit. The council hall was quiet, the only sounds being the soft hum of energy fields and the faint clicking of distant machinery. Ethan took a deep breath. This was the moment. Humans prided themselves on courage, and this was a moment that demanded it. "Lyria," he began, "I have come to respect and admire you more than anyone I've met. Your work, your intelligence, your dedication to your people. It's extraordinary, and I would be honored if you would consider sharing your life with me." For a heartbeat, the room seemed to freeze. Even the faint hum of the energy fields felt louder, as if the universe itself was waiting for her response. Lyria's eyes widened, slightly, and for a moment Ethan thought she might say yes. But then her expression softened in a way that was polite but firm. "Captain Vance," she said carefully, "I am deeply honored by your feelings. You are remarkable, and any person would be fortunate to have your trust and friendship. But I cannot accept." The words hit Ethan like a sandstorm. He had prepared for rejection, but no preparation could make the sting any lighter. I see," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I value you, Ethan," Lyria continued gently. "But my path is different. My work, my responsibilities, they must come first. You are human, capable, and strong, but I cannot join our lives in that way." Ethan nodded slowly, though his chest ached. Humans were resilient, though, resilient enough to bear rejection, learn from it, and grow stronger. He would not allow this moment to define him or break his spirit. "I understand," he said finally, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside. "I respect your decision." Lyria inclined her head, satisfied that he had taken her refusal gracefully. "Thank you, Ethan. I hope we can continue to work together. Your contributions to Zithera are invaluable." Ethan forced a small smile, masking the disappointment that still churned beneath his calm exterior. "Of course," he said, "always." After the meeting, he walked out into the open air. The desert sun beat down and sand drifted around the plaza. Humans had a saying: "The desert tests the body, but it strengthens the soul." Ethan thought of that as he walked through the city. Lyria's rejection had stung, but it had not defeated him. Humans were survivors, and he would survive this as well. He spent the following months immersing himself in work. He oversaw the construction of new defense systems for the colony, worked on faster starships, and trained younger pilots and engineers. Humans were known for adaptability, and Ethan exemplified it. Even heartbreak could be transformed into strength, and he used his own disappointment to push himself further than ever before. During this time, he also observed Lyria from a distance. She moved through political circles with elegance and authority, mediating disputes, making alliances, and defending weaker colonies. Ethan admired her still, but now with a tempered respect rather than personal desire. Humans could admire without attachment, channeling emotions into action and growth. One day, a crisis emerged. A small alien trade convoy was under attack by space pirates near the outer rim of Zithera's system. Without hesitation, Ethan led a rescue mission. Flying through asteroid fields and dodging enemy fire, he coordinated the convoy's defense with precision and courage. By the time he returned to Orion, the convoy was safe, and humans across Zithera began to recognize the ingenuity and bravery that made them stand out in the galaxy. Yet even in triumph, a small part of him remembered Lyria. Humans carried hope as a quiet, enduring flame, and Ethan's hope was that one day paths might cross again, under different circumstances. But for now, duty and responsibility guided him as they always had. As the desert night fell and the twin moons rose, bathing Orion in silver light, Ethan stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the city. The wind whispered across the dunes, and he felt the weight of the past months. Lyria's rejection had been painful, yes, but it had also reminded him why humans were remarkable. They could endure loss, continue to grow, and face the future with courage. Ethan clenched his fists, determination burning in his eyes. 6 years, 10 years, or a lifetime, humans never stopped moving forward, and while he would respect Lyria's choice, he would not let it define him. Humans did not wait for life to happen. They made life happen, shaping their destiny with their own hands, minds, and hearts. From the cliffs above Orion, he watched the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly, but humans had built cities here. The stars shone above, and humans had flown among them. In the face of heartbreak, he had chosen action. In the face of uncertainty, he had chosen courage. And in the quiet of the desert night, Ethan Vance understood something fundamental about his kind. Humans were unstoppable not because they could fight every battle, but because they never stopped trying, never stopped hoping, and never stopped striving. Tomorrow he would return to his work. Tomorrow humans would face new challenges, new threats, new adventures. And as he walked back toward the city, the soft glow of Orion's towers guiding his steps, he felt a quiet certainty. Whatever the galaxy held, humans would endure, and humans like Ethan would continue to shine, even in the darkest corners of space.